Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. It is 4th of February, 12 p.m. Moscow time, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news. And in case you like the update, please click that like button, leave some commentary, share video with your friends, with anybody. That might be very helpful to deal with this extremely aggressive algorithm and shadow ban on steroids that my channels are facing. And also, I remind you, dear friends, that lately, last couple of days, I'm launching two streams, isn't it? First half of a day, one stream, second half of a day, another one. And I'm not repeating same news. I might share a couple of news that I think are important in both streams, but usually streams are different, so maybe you will check my previous live stream. I don't know, it's up to you, of course. And without further delay, let's go through some news now. And I will start with this reporter from TASS news agency about Abu Dhabi so-called peace talks that will launch today. Trilateral talks between U.S., Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky and Russian representatives. I can give you some details from TASS news agency's article on the matter. The second round of negotiations on Ukraine reconciliation will be held in Abu Dhabi on February 4th and 5th in a trilateral format involving Russia, United States, and Ukraine. The format remains in force, source told the TASS news agency. Earlier, Vladimir Zelensky, head of this Western-backed terrorist regime in Kiev, stated that the Ukrainian negotiating team would adjust its approach following Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. He did not elaborate on details. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that in retaliation to Ukraine's attack on civilian facilities in Russia, Russian forces had delivered massive strikes on Ukraine's defense sector and their energy facilities, also used for military purposes overnight to February 3rd. When it comes to delegations, according to Russian Presidential Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov, the composition of the Russian security group will remain unchanged after the first round, when it was led by Igor Kostukov, head of the main intelligence directorate of the General Staff. Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, Rustem Umerov, was at the head of the Ukrainian part of the working group. According to media reports, Washington will be represented by Steve Witkoff, special envoy of the U.S. President for the peacekeeping missions. The White House also confirmed that U.S. entrepreneur Jared Kushner will take part in these talks. Also, Kostyukov earlier said that during their first round, and Kostyukov is head of Russian GRU, by the way, so-called GRU, it has different name now. So Kostyukov earlier said that during the first round, Ukrainian negotiators were in a good mood, or in a sad mood, sorry, not in a good, but in a sad mood, while the Russian team was in a good spirit. The negotiators communicated in Russian in a constructive atmosphere. Peskov in turn stated that their talks were very difficult, discussing some aspects publicly while their negotiations are still ongoing means to harm the process, he added, and this means that most likely from Russian officials we're not going to learn much about either today's talks or tomorrow's talks. This second round will last for these 2 days, but there is a high probability that either Kiev regime will share some information about these talks or American side. Usually Western media always comes up with these articles based on some sources, right, without naming the names. When it comes to venue, the venue of talks was not disclosed. The delegations' movements in Abu Dhabi, as well as the organizational and logistical matters, are kept out of the public eye. All we know is the talks going to take place in Abu Dhabi and in the same city. By the way, just about an hour ago, maybe a little longer, there was talks also between leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, according to reports that I see on Russian segment of internet. President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev and the Azerbaijan delegation met with the Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan and Armenian delegation. Talks lasted for about an hour maybe, and not really much is known about results of those talks, but I'm sharing this information with you to highlight that United Arab Emirates is becoming sort of one of the key platforms for all sorts of negotiations between different conflicting sides. Good for Abu Dhabi, obviously, and I think membership of United Arab Emirates in BRICS might actually enhance capabilities of UAE to be seen as a potential side for difficult negotiations. Maybe this plays some role. Anyways, let's go through some other news. And as I already mentioned, by the way, U.S. delegation will be led by Steve Witkoff, special envoy of U.S. President, and also White House confirmed that Jared Kushner will participate in these talks, son-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump. And well, one might say, you know what, you see, U.S. administration is actually moving towards the escalation and stuff, but in reality, this is not really the case. I'm quite sure American ruling class plans to basically transfer responsibility for this proxy war against Russia on their counterparts, on European elites, while they will focus mostly on the global south, on Western Hemisphere, and the global south, on China. To be more precise, and that's all it is, right? I don't see on the part of US actual intent to de-escalate anything or to seek peace. And on this very matter, by the way, as an additional confirmation that my understanding of the situation is correct, I can give you some statements of Lindsey Graham, a US senator and the best body of US President Donald Trump. They spend a lot of time together, Graham and Trump. And Lindsey Graham was not happy, and he's always not happy with Russia, extreme Russophobe and Russia hater. And he's calling Trump's administration, Trump now, to intensify pressure on Russian trade partners, and also to transfer Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv regime. And because Lindsey Graham in many ways can be seen as a talking head for neocons, American ruling class, also for administration in the US, who knows, maybe in upcoming days we will see a dramatic shift once again in the rhetoric of Trump, and maybe topic of Tomahawks once again will reappear in the media. Maybe, of course, despite all the claims of either Lindsey Graham or any other Western public figure that Tomahawks are sort of a game changers, and deployment of Tomahawk will force Russia to submission. In reality, Tomahawk is just another cruise missile, by the way, and Russian air defense systems. If Russian air defense systems know anything, is to deal with all sorts of cruise missiles, right? All sorts of aerial targets, and their Tomahawk not going to be any more difficult to intercept for Russian specialists than French Scalp EG cruise missiles, for example, or British Storm Shadow cruise missiles, or US-made ATACMS missiles for that matter. But yet again, I'm sharing this information about statements of Lindsey Graham as an additional indicator that in reality, no one should be fooled by U.S. Leadership, and no one should actually believe that American side is about peace. Not really. All they do is transferring responsibility on a prolongation of this proxy war from themselves to European elites. That's all, right? So that they will be a little more free to focus on some other areas, and Europeans are not happy about it, and they are quite openly criticizing US for this approach. But that's a whole different story, isn't it? And Lindsey Graham, by the way, in that statement also bragged about how effective US pressure was on India, and there are similar approach to be added, should be implemented against other trade partners of the Russia, and he meant China, obviously, first and foremost. And well, a spokesperson of the Russian president, Peskov, Dmitry Peskov, reacted on this statement and said that, and by the way, even Trump earlier, like 2 days ago, after phone conversation with the Indian Prime Minister Modi, said that India will no longer buy Russian oil and will increase purchases of American oil or oil from the US, let's say, and possibly from Venezuela also. And Peskov commented on that, and we have this report now that Kremlin does not confirm information that India refused to buy Russian oil. We have not heard any statements from Delhi on this matter yet. We intend to further develop our bilateral relationships with Delhi. Short comment from Peskov, but quite telling. I don't know from where Trump or Graham are coming from, but Delhi itself did not inform the Russian side that they are cutting cooperation either in the energy sector or any other sector, really. If anything, I personally expect cooperation between the two countries, between Russia and India, to intensify and reach new heights. Anyways, let's continue with some other news. And RIA Novosti is reporting, based on latest update of the Russian Defense Ministry, that past night air defenses intercepted 24 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. 11 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 8 over the Belgorod region, 4 over the Rostov region, and 1 in Astrakhan region. And even though Russian air defenses are most capable in this world, unfortunately, every now and then, some drones, some artillery shells, some missiles are managing to bypass these air defenses. And quite often, target of these missiles and drones are civilian areas, and there is casualties among Russian citizens. And on this matter, by the way, I'll share with you this information that I see on Solovyov Telegram channel, which is one of the biggest Telegram channels in the Russian segment, which states that over the past 24 hours, as a result of attacks by the armed forces of Ukraine on the Kherson region alone, 4 civilians were killed and another 13 people were injured. And this information is originated from governor of the Kherson region, Vladimir Saldo. So it's almost a daily occurrence when Russian civilians are killed and wounded by this terrorist regime of Zelensky and its NATO backers. Now, fortunately, this will continue until Western ruling class is forced to submission, forced by Russia. And this day is coming. It might take some time, but we will get there. RIA Novosti is also reporting that, Russian armed forces are retaliating on these terrorist attacks, due to these terrorist attacks by hostile side. And on 3rd of February, there was a relatively large-scale Russian drone and missile strikes on military, logistical, energy infrastructure of the Kyiv regime, and obviously Zelensky and his henchmen, also Western backers of Zelensky, in Europe, in in US did try to use these Russian retaliatory strikes as an opportunity to derail talks between Washington and Moscow that's gonna launch today in Abu Dhabi, right? And well, U.S. president was asked about it, and he said that Putin kept his word on suspending strikes for a week, and seems like Trump was happy with that result. That well, his ask was heard by Russian side, and there was a ceasefire until 1st of February, right? Until even 2nd of February, I would say, because on 1st of February there was no reports about any strikes on energy infrastructure on the hostile side, but on 2nd and 3rd February there was. And I can give you a short video, by the way, of Trump's statements, and yes, this attempt to force Trump to say some nasty stuff about Russia did not really work this time around. But for how long? For how long Trump will maintain this rhetoric is anybody's guess. I think soon we might see significant shift in rhetoric, and this is the video that I'm talking about.
Mr. President, yesterday you were talking about how Vladimir Putin had agreed to a pause during the cold weather. Overnight, those attacks have started up again.
I know. It was Sunday. It was Sunday to Sunday, and it opened up, and he hit him hard last night. No, he agreed. He kept his word on that. It's a lot. You know, 1 week is, we'll take anything because it's really, really cold over there. But
So, and that's the statement of Trump. And as I said, this time around, these provocateurs failed to trigger U.S. president to say these nasty things that he's, well known for about either Russian president or about Russian people or Russian Federation. I remind you, by the way, that in one occasion, Trump said that lives of, indirectly basically, but he said that lives of the Russian citizens means nothing, right? When he was criticizing Russia for retaliatory strikes. So, I mean, rhetoric from White House might change any day, and I'm afraid will change soon. Not in a good way, but we will see. Let's continue with some other news. And Belousov, defense minister of Russian Federation, made quite interesting statements in regards to Russian military-industrial complex. And as the headline says on this report, he ordered uninterrupted production of their new weapons. Let me give you some details. So, Defense Minister of the Russian Federation, Andrei Belousov, has ordered uninterrupted production and supply of highly sought-after weapons and equipment. The ministry's press service reported, and then quote from a statement, the issues of supplying the armed forces groups in the special military operations zone were discussed, and the results of the production and supply of military products for January were summarized. The statement following their meeting reads, thus, last month in January, the Russian army received more than 10,000 units of the weapons and about 2 million rounds of munition. And this is just in January, by the way. I mean, quite a lot here, isn't it? 10,000 units of the weapon systems of all types, and about 2 million rounds of munition. Impressive. This year, that is in 2026, it is planned to deliver more than 310,000 types of equipment to Russian armed forces and about 21 million munition of all types to the Russian armed forces. The Ministry of Defense has also established contracts for equipment and munition with the long production cycles to maintain the regularity of the deliveries into 2027. To ensure timely procurement of their components, defense industry enterprises have been allowed to obtain loans from a support bank before budget funds are received. So Russian Federation is preparing, by the way, preparing and doing whatever is necessary to not just provide Russian militaries with all the necessary weapons and munitions and everything else, but I guess a significant number of weapons and munition was stockpiled there just in case, because day in, day out, we are hearing from the Western countries, especially from European countries, that they're going to deploy their troops on the Q-controlled territory. And as Russian leadership says on numerous occasions, that will mean potentially direct clashes between Russian and those NATO troops, because Russia will never agree on the presence of Western forces in Ukraine and will designate them as a legitimate target. So obviously, it makes all the sense for Russian Federation to prepare for a possibility of even a wider war or open war, let's say, with either whole of NATO or with several member states of this terrorist organization that NATO is. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting, and I think this is an interesting report, that hackers from Berezini group obtained data of foreign mercenaries that are fighting in the units of main intelligence directorate of the Kiev regime. The pro-Russian hacker group Berezini has obtained a list of foreign mercenaries who have joined the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. News agency reports, RIA Novosti reports about it. List includes citizens of Colombia, Sweden, Argentina, Brazil, United States, Britain, France, Spain, Turkmenistan, Norway, Japan, Belgium, Australia, Germany, and Denmark. Quite a wide geography, isn't it? When it comes to presence of the foreign mercenaries on a Kiev-controlled territory, and I think in some cases they might be actually mercenaries, individuals from different countries that went to Ukraine on their own and sign up for a fight alongside Ukrainian Nazis and fascists. But in many other cases, especially when it comes to European states, I think mercenaries usually are members of the special forces of these NATO countries, just designated as mercenaries, right? For plausible deniability matters. That's all. Of course, this data eventually will end up, or already end up, in the hands of Russian security services, and I have no doubts, by the way, that no matter how long it will take, Russian security services will track down these mercenaries, and it might take a day, months, year, 5 years, 10 years, but eventually they will pay price for crimes that they committed against the Russian people and the Russian Federation. Also, dear friends, today, by the way, early today, in my first update, first live stream at night, I shared this information that allegedly, according to French President Macron, preparations for contact with President Putin and Macron himself are being carried out at the technical levels. And well, as I said in my previous update, I find this report from France quite strange, to say the least, to put it mildly, because especially after recent statements of Foreign Minister of France, who basically threatened Russian people, Russian Federation, Russian culture, everything Russian to be erased from this earth, right? And day or two after such statements from Foreign Minister, by the way, formally from French diplomat, a few days after such crazy statements from Paris, to see this news that some technical works are on the way to arrange conversation between presidents of Russia and France really makes no sense to me personally. If anything, after such statements of French foreign minister, Russian Federation should at least recall ambassador from France, or even better, if Russian Federation will cut diplomatic ties with the French Republic. That would seem more logical to me that engagement in technical preparations of talks with the French president. But well, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Maybe in upcoming days, I don't know, Putin will waste some time talking to Macron. We will see. We will find out. But meanwhile, Russian Federation, in large, by the way, definitely knows where French elites are, where their stand is, how hostile they are, and the threatening for Russian Federation. And obviously, Moscow is taking certain steps to counter that. And one of the directions is North Africa. And you know, dear friends, France and Algeria, for example, have very tense relationships, historically speaking. And recently, this photo appeared on the internet that you can see on your screen right now, which depicts two Russian-made Su-35 multi-role 4++ generation fighter jets in Air Force of Algeria. And this is definitely somewhat nasty surprise for France, for French Air Force and naval Air Force also, obviously, because France don't really has anything in its disposal to counter Su-35s. Of course, in case when these Algerian Su-35s are piloted by professionals, high-level professionals that knew for sure how to use all the advantages and the unique capabilities of their Su-35s. That are, in my personal opinion, best multi-role fighter jets of 4++ generation. Maybe fifth generation fighter jets can be seen to be more capable than Su-35s, but only fifth generation. Also, dear friends, when it comes to France, I want to share with you this information that Elon Musk was head of numerous American companies, including SpaceX, Twitter X, and so on. Elon Musk was summoned to Paris to testify in a cybercrime probe into X. Paris prosecutor's office scheduled a voluntary hearing for April 20. And simultaneously, there were reports that French law enforcement agencies were conducting searches in X's offices, Twitter X's offices in France, and clearly Paris is moving ahead to implement control on as many social platforms as possible, or to ban them. In France, in case of Twitter X, I don't think French leadership will succeed because this is an American company, right? And therefore, I guess it's only a matter of time, and Twitter X will be banned in France. We'll find out. And when it comes to Elon Musk itself, will he go to France to testify or not? Is anybody's guess? Probably he will just ignore this, but we will see. We will see. Also, dear friends, as I reported yesterday in my updates, head of NATO, Secretary General of NATO, young Mark Rutte, went to Kiev yesterday. He had a meeting with Zelensky, and he also made a speech in a state rather, and in his speech, during his speech, he hinted that Kyiv regime will have to make their difficult decisions to achieve peace, but, and this is very important, he also said that once peace is achieved or ceasefire is achieved, then NATO will deploy its troops. Number of NATO member states will deploy their troops and provide their military cover in air, on the ground, from the sea. And these statements of Mark Rutte clearly indicates that he was basically telling officials there in on Kyiv-controlled territory and also public that well, this is a trickery. This is a trickery. You will agree now on let's say withdrawal of troops from Donbass as Russia demands. Then we will rearm you, reorganize you, right? We will do everything to increase your battle capability. Simultaneously, we will deploy our troops here, and at one point, we will trigger next phase of escalation, and you will be not alone at that point because these NATO troops and NATO countries will be engaged in a war against Russia together with you. That was the message that Mark Rutte delivered to Ukraine, to Kyiv regime yesterday, and well, indirectly, basically, he said exactly what I was saying for many months about real plans of globalists and their elites, right? That they are not seeking actual truth, by the way, or they are not seeking actual peace. All they want is a break, temporary ceasefire, to rearm, reorganize their proxies, right? To deploy troops on Kyiv-controlled territory, and then to provoke next phase of this proxy war against Russia, during the which a number of European countries will be engaged in direct clashes with the Russian Federation militaries from those European NATO member states, if not inter NATO. And I was saying many times that seems like European elites are afraid to go ahead with this plan if they have no full support of US, military support from US. And Mark Rutte and many other officials already hinted on numerous occasions that American troops will be there too. American troops will provide assistance. Also, I have not heard anything from the US about deployment of US troops into Kyiv-controlled territory in past several days. And earlier, US officials were always denying the claims that US has any plans to deploy their troops, but things might change, you know. RT is reporting, for example, on this matter based on an article in Financial Times, according to which US and European forces could be deployed to Ukraine under Zelensky's plan. Let me give you some details on that. Turkey and its Western backers have drawn up a plan that envisages military forces from the US and European countries moving into Ukraine to fight Russian troops in the event of Moscow violates a ceasefire being demanded by Vladimir Zelensky, Financial Times has reported. And I don't think this information really needs any additional words from me personally, because it's all clear. It's all clear, right? That's why Moscow should never agree on a temporary solutions and should never agree on the presence of NATO troops on Kyiv-controlled territory. And Russian officials, by the way, as you know, including President Vladimir Putin, have repeatedly rejected the idea of ceasefire as a precursor to a peace deal, saying that it would only be used by Kyiv and its sponsors to rearm and regroup forces. Instead, Moscow has always insisted that the conflict needs a permanent peace solution, which requires root causes of the crisis to be addressed. And the Russian position have not changed on this matter even slightest, right? At least formally, officially. So that's the plan, by the way. That's the plan. Globalists and their allies are still moving forward with their aggressive plans, including plans to provoke open confrontation between at least number of NATO member states and the Russian Federation. And this number of NATO states, in my personal opinion, will be UK, France, will be led by UK and France. I don't know about US, and their potential directions of their NATO attack on Russia is Baltic states, of course, Baltic Chihuahuas, and Finland. Poland potentially will be used for attack. Poland and the Baltic Chihuahuas will be used to attack Kaliningrad region too. If it comes to, if Western elites will actually go ahead with these insane plans that they have and they are openly discussing. Basically, I reminded you, friends, that number of NATO generals already publicly stated on numerous occasions that they are preparing and are ready to obliterate Kaliningrad region. So one don't even have to guess what plans of the Western elites are. They are saying it quite often, quite openly. The Glad newspaper is also reporting that Estonia, by the way, one of the Baltic Chihuahuas, has detained their container ship Baltic Spirit with the Russian crew. And let me give you details on that. So the container ship Baltic Spirit in route to St. Petersburg under the Bahamian flag and with the Russian crew was detained by Estonia on a suspicion of smuggling goods from Ecuador. ERRE reported the container ship was detained in Estonian internal waters. The crew included 23 Russian citizens, and they offered no resistance during their operation, according to Estonian authorities. The vessel entered the territorial waters to bunker and was at their official anchorage at their time of their inspection. Officers from the investigative department of the Estonian Tax and Customs Board are conducting preliminary inspections on the border of the container ship. The vessel was en route to St. Petersburg, but according to Estonian Navy, the Baltic Spirit is not a part of Russian so-called shadow fleet and is not subject to EU sanctions. The detention was carried out by investigative department of the Estonian Tax and their Customs Board in conjunction with their police and their Estonian Navy. Basically, shadow fleet, not shadow fleet. NATO countries are harassing all the vessels, by the way, that are directing towards the Russian, entering the Russian ports or leaving the Russian ports, right? And this harassment will continue. Today or tomorrow or in a week from now, Estonia probably will release this container ship. But this type of behavior on part of NATO member states clearly increases the risk that at some point we might, Baltic region might actually turn into zone of into a war zone between NATO countries and the Russian Federation, because only so many times Moscow can tolerate this insanity that is coming from NATO side. And the Russian militaries are preparing. And for example, yesterday I saw this reporter. Yesterday evening I saw this reporter on Russian segment of internet that Spanish Ministry of Defense published the photos of their F-18 crew stationed in Lithuania, scrambling and are intercepting Russian Su-30 M2s over the Baltic Sea. These pictures of Su-30s that you see on your screen, by the way, made from a Spanish plane, I guess. And what is interesting on these pictures, if you in a close look, after a close look, is that planes were carrying either Kh-31A anti-ship missiles or Kh-31P missiles. They look more similar. These planes were carrying some serious weapons. These Russian planes, right? And they are clearly preparing. They are clearly preparing for potential retaliatory strikes. I think for potential retaliatory strikes on hostiles, right, in the Baltics. And who these hostiles are, you know, as well as I do, isn't it? So this crazy behavior on part of NATO countries very soon might trigger actually military confrontation between the sides. Few more news, dear friends, and well, what can I say? By the way, looks like sooner they're gonna be nobody on my live streams, because YouTube will either completely delete my channels or will send notifications to none of the members of the community because, well, probably you are noticing, dear friends, less and less people are joining the live streams, and I don't know, either my news updates are not interesting and the news that I share are irrelevant, or maybe something else is happening. Therefore, I'm ever more grateful, dear friends, for all of you for joining my streams, for paying attention to my work, and so yes, probably soon I will have to make some dramatic changes. By the way, because I know perfectly well I cannot deal with these algorithms, either on YouTube or on Rumble. I just cannot do anything against these algorithms. So therefore, some big changes probably will have to be made by me in terms of this project soon. By the way, maybe next week already. But nevertheless, truly grateful, dear friends. Truly grateful for your attention. And so, yeah, I can see commentary. People are working, Levan. Yes, people are working, but right now, if any big channel that are not in shadow bound will make live stream, they will have thousands of people online. Are those people not working? It's an algorithm, right? If from 37,000 members of the community, only 100 people receives notification, and from this 100 only 50 70 joins the stream, then channel is going to die, right? It is what it is, man. Anyways, let's I don't know, should I continue, man, or not? I think I will end this live stream on that, dear friends. I think I will end this live stream on that. There is quite a number of news left, and I will share rest of the news during today's night live stream at 12 a.m. There was no super chat, no nothing from support platform to react. So thank you very much. Hopefully you did like the update. Hopefully you find news interesting, important. I don't know. I'm doubting this project now, because maybe it's me, by the way. Maybe my program's not really interesting, and maybe I should just stop wasting time on this. I will come up with some solutions, but it is heartbreaking, man. It is heartbreaking to see that there is a constant regress, right? Constant setback after setback after setback, and yeah, something about it. Anyways, dear friends, thank you all for joining this stream, for your attention. Have a wonderful day, and well, if you will have time, well, join this night stream today. I will launch live stream at 12 a.m. Moscow time. Take care and see you next time.